So it's about time to have a look at FS 2024, I think. It's been out for, we're in April 2025 now, it's been out since November. I haven't looked at FS 2024, I've looked at some of the chatter that's been going on around it, but the truth is, my PC wasn't up to it. The PC was barely up to Flight Sim 2020, and in fact the configuration I was running in, it wasn't even up to prepared or FSX before it. So that's got to change. No point in trying to squeeze FS 2024 into that old PC. So time to sweep the floor and start again. And the approach this time is going to be to try and you can't future-proof, everybody knows that, but as far as possible build this system with a bit of longevity in mind. Now, people have queried whether I was going to be interested in VR at various points. Now, I've never tried VR on any of those systems. I mean, they were nowhere near capable of, so it just was a non-starter. But I've always been interested in the idea of VR since the 1990s. I don't know if anybody remembers a book by Howard Rheingold called Virtual Reality. That was about 1991, I think that book was published. Back then, the tone of that book, I mean, it was a great book, but the tone was very evangelical and optimistic. This was the time of VPL, if anybody remembers that company. VR was on TV and everywhere. And maybe some people can even remember, you could try it out. There was a thing called Virtuality, and I used to live in London, and the Trocadero Centre had some Virtuality rigs. I mean, by today's standards, the specs were just incredibly basic, and the headsets looked like, you look like the creature from Alien wearing one of the Virtuality headsets. But anyway, that aside, VR has been steadily maturing over the last 5 years, really, 10 years maybe, and it's caught my eye now with the new headsets from Big Screen Beyond and the other one, Meganex. To cut a long story short, this new PC is going to be VR capable, and I'm more than likely going to get the Big Screen Beyond 2 headset. So we're going to build that up. The headset won't come in, it's not out yet, but until then we're going to be VR capable, certainly. So what have we got? Well, this is going to be basically a supercomputer by my standards, certainly. We've gone AMD on the CPU. CPU that seems most widely recommended for flight sim these days is the Ryzen 7 9800X3D. I think I've said that right. Here it is. I can't remember the prices specifically on all this. 450 quid probably for that. MSI motherboard, so a good, well featured, probably way over capable motherboard for what I want. But in that sense, we're trying to future proof this to the extent it's possible. 1000 watt power supply, of course, liquid cooling. I'm not really that comfortable with liquid cooling, but for this CPU it seems to be recommended on many of the pre-built PCs you can get based around this configuration. They've got liquid cooling. The word is you can run a AMD Ryzen 7 on an air cooler. I did worry it'd be a bit marginal. So that's at least going to give us a nice compact build. Corsair Vengeance 64 gigabytes of DDR5. I say no compromise there. I mean, I could have up to 256 gigabytes, but I think 64 is going to do it. Insanely small. This is just amazing how technology comes on. This is a 4 terabyte M2 drive. So I mean, that looks almost like the chip you put in your digital camera. But 4 terabytes. There we go. Not going to have any hard disks in this. I might put some of the old legacy solid state disks. In fact, there's one. I don't even know how big that is. A terabyte or half it. Now, one thing missing, everybody's interested to know what the next piece is. I did think of, and I did consider going straight to the top of the tree and getting the NVIDIA 5090, which I could have got. I was looking at Scan's inventory scan, and they got stock of all the new NVIDIA cards in this week, so I could have had a 5090. Ridiculously expensive. £2,500 is the sort of entry level there. But looking at the research, even for VR, it's just overkill. Particularly you know, if I'm going for a big screen beyond, which is a relatively, well, I don't want to say low spec VR headset, but relatively lower resolution than some of these Pimax and Vario. So anyway, I haven't gone for the 5090, but I have gone for a 50 series, and probably no surprise, having said all that, we've gone for the 5070 Ti. You know, the brand, I had a choice. This was the probably, I think, the cheapest branded one from Zotac. Still not cheap. I think this was £800 just for the GPU. And the word is, it's, you know, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I've read and all the YouTube videos I've watched, which is what passes for research these days, that should be well capable of running a VR headset, and certainly capable of running even a 4K display. I'm not planning to run a 4K display. I'm going to run initially a 32-inch 1440p display. So that's 2560 by 1440, which is what I'm running on my desktop, and I think it's an amazing display. Just the resolution is, I mean, it's fantastic compared to anything I've had before. So I'm going to run one of those displays as the basic display for this new build. Obviously, if the VR thing comes off and it's a success, that'll be my primary display. But until then, I'm going to experiment with, you know, some of the things you've seen before on this channel with the multi screens. I've still got the little 19-inch screens, NEC screens, so I could have two of those as outliers. I probably will try that. So that's the computer. What else do we need to? We need to talk about controls. So I've sold all of my controls, well, all of my expensive controls. So the Alpha Yoke, the Bravo Quad, they've gone. The Virtual-Fly TQ6 has gone. The Yoko's gone. The MFG rudder pedals have gone. I still have the CH Virtual Pilot Pro as my joystick. The other thing I've held on to is my Flight Link rudder pedals. Now those are the hydraulically damped rudder pedals. They're actually helicopter pedals, so there's no brakes, but they're really good rudder pedals, and I always thought about using those in a new cockpit type of situation, vintage aircraft or something like that. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I'm going to go with joysticks. This is why I sold all the Yokes. Now all that stuff I've sold, by the way, has essentially financed what I've just introduced you to here. So it's a lot of money, but it's a redistribution of the money in one sense. Now, you know, the equation isn't quite complete, because what I'm about to describe is the hardware for the new setup. I'm not going to be, I mean, it's probably no surprise, I'm not going to be using the Virtual Pilot Pro as anything other than an interim measure, but I'm going to go with, well, some mixture of the Virpil joystick controls, VKB, who do similar but not the same kind of gear. I think that was it, yeah. So the exact combination of, I know what I want, but it doesn't help that everything in Virpil's catalogue is back ordered, so we don't really know when we'd be able to get that. It's also very expensive. VKB is cheaper but not as good, so we'll be getting some combination of those things in due course. And the other way the equation doesn't balance, the parts I've sold, obviously the VR headset's another eye-wateringly, you know, it's over £1,000 just for the VR, so you know we're still going to be in the red when we get done with this. You know, I'm not sure if I'm going to build a dedicated cockpit in the sense that I did before, but it'll be some cockpit-like constellation of those parts. My plan is to get two joysticks, so one will be the stick, one will be the throttle. You know, each of the VKB and the Virpil controls have an option to set up a joystick as a throttle. I mean, the reason I'm going for that category of control in particular, I mean, apart from the fact that I want a joystick, both of those manufacturers do stick grips with huge amounts of controls on them. Now that's going to be important for VR. You know, the one criticism I've had, I may have expressed this in previous videos, of the VR model is the fact that it shuts out the real world. Now obviously a lot of these new headsets are starting to explore the mixed reality and the pass-through video. The big screen beyond doesn't have that capability, but also it's in its infancy. You know, that technology So a proper mixed reality cockpit. It's going to be too sketchy for me at the minute. So a proper HOTAS, I suppose, setup. So there it is, that's all I can tell you for now. So we'll put that all together. What I might do is install the old sims as well. I hope it's okay to run 2020 and 2024 back to back. But I might install P3D as well. I've got P3D version 4 point something, 4.5 or something like that. You know, I'd kind of like to install FSX. Partly just nostalgia. I am curious though to see how it runs on a supercomputer like this. So that's all to come. Let's get the PC sorted first, and we'll be back.